Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. On today's episode of me talking about stuff and things, I'm going to be talking about This Is Gonna Suck So Bad, which is season 19 episode 5. Now before I continue, please check out the links in the description below. I highly recommend the surveys. Please fill those out if you have not already and share the links if you want. Now, onto the episode, we are in Botswana, Africa, specifically the Okavango Delta, and we are reintroduced to true fan Ernie, who I am very excited to see return. I want to see him return for more challenges, please and thank you. He's hardworking, he's a talented survivalist, he is amazing at supporting others, and he just brings a nice energy and vibe to the table, so please, please, please bring him back. And he is back to attempt a 21-day challenge. Ernie is narrating a lot at the beginning of the episode about the environment, and we hear some narration about how the nights are cold, or going to get cold at least. Ernie talks about partnership dynamics, and his starting PSR is a 6.0. And Ernie was talking about how he really wants to have a good partner and that these partnerships can make or break you in the challenge, and he really wants to have someone he can work with. And surprise, surprise, for the first time in the history of the show, we have two fan survivalists taking on a 21-day challenge together, which means that Amanda has returned to be Ernie's partner for the challenge, which is a first, which is amazing. And Amanda is called Mandy throughout the episode, and she says her name is Mandy, but I'm going to call her Amanda because she was introduced as Amanda, and I'm like, I'm just going to say Amanda. But for anyone confused, Amanda is Mandy. But anyway, Amanda's starting PSR is 5.7, and the two have a Makoro, which is a canoe that will help them navigate through the delta. They're also given a pot and fire starter, and Ernie brought a machete and Amanda brought a fishing kit. They take a look at their map and need to canoe to an island 2.1 miles away. Ernie is definitely a calming presence, a motivator, pep talker, and very knowledgeable. I wanted to reiterate that because why not? Bring him back for more challenges, please, production. After the two canoe to the island, they begin setting up camp, and Amanda has to remove a leech from Ernie. She's also very animated and makes everything entertaining with her expressiveness. They set up a boma, and Ernie continues making the boma when Amanda starts making a fire, which she does, and they have to rush to make the boma because the sun is setting fast and they need to get their boma together to protect them from large animals. And that night they hear elephants in the distance. Later they hear something that may not be an elephant and may be a lion. Day 2, and a producer approaches Ernie and Amanda with the ranger, and the ranger has important information to give to Ernie and Amanda because there has been some nighttime activity that is very worrisome, because the ranger shows the two a paw print that was several feet away from their shelter, and the ranger estimates a 4-year-old lioness was near Ernie and Amanda's boma. They are told to reinforce their shelter to make sure they're safe, and that's what they spend several hours doing. That night, Amanda hears something near the shelter while Ernie is still asleep. He can fall asleep quickly and needs as much as he can, and he also has a bad sunburn. And we hear Amanda talking about how Ernie's kryptonite is his sleep and her kryptonite is weight loss, so that may come up later. Day 3, and the two discuss food and going fishing, and the two go hunting for bait for fishing and go look for some good spots to go fishing. And Ernie spots some water lilies, which they can boil and eat, and his PSR goes from 6.0 to 6.2, but unfortunately, they both don't like it. And they hear a warthog, and Ernie wants to hunt it. He goes out looking for it with his machete and manages to spot it and runs after it. We see a commercial break, and then when we come back, the warthog unfortunately gets away, and Ernie decides that they don't really have the tools to go hunting for a warthog, so they decide to go for smaller prey. And Amanda wants to set traps for smaller animals, and day 4 she begins working on cordage, and she talks about how she's Amanda 2.0, and that's mentioned a few times throughout the episode. And Amanda wants to show off the new skills that she learned between challenges, and she begins setting snares using cordage that she made herself. Then she sets up the snare traps near small holes that may have birds or a small animal. Her PSR rises from 5.7 to 6.1. Day 5, Amanda goes to check her snares, but something has broken through it. The two then attach 2 fishing lines to poles to help them with passive fishing. They mention the water levels are rising as they go out to set their lines. they use the canoe to go out a little bit, and Ernie shoves the poles in, and they leave them there in the hopes of catfish or another fish being there when they check it later on. Day 6, and it sounds like the hippos are roaring like dinosaurs, because we see the hippos and we hear a roar, and it just reminded me of dinosaurs. I don't know how hippos sound, but I don't know if that was a hippo roar or a dinosaur roar. I don't know what's happening. Anyway, Amanda mentions the lack of calories is making them weaker, and she goes to get some water to boil. The two go out to check their lines, and sadly, there's nothing there. And then we hear some more about how they're hungry and tired. Amanda goes to get the water from the fire, and she tries to pick it up with 2 sticks, but unfortunately, it falls from her hands, and it hits the ground, and it sprays boiling water everywhere. And she gets hit on the legs by some boiling water and goes into the water to cool her legs off, and that is very unfortunate, but luckily she's okay. Her PSR drops from 6.1 to 6.0. Ernie then goes to check on her and give her a pep talk and see how she's doing. Day 7, the two go to check their lines and notice the water levels are rising some more. The first pole is empty, but the second pole has a catfish. They have their first protein win of the challenge, and Ernie processes the fish and teaches Amanda what to do because she wants to learn. After cooking the catfish, the two have their first meal of the challenge. Later, we learn that the rising water levels are bringing in sandflies, which is very unfortunate, and that night they get bitten a lot. Night 8 and 9, we see them getting attacked by bugs. Day 10, and the two are talking about the bug bites and how irritated they are, and the two begin working on an interior shelter to protect from the bugs, and the interior shelter will be a lean-to shelter. Ernie mentions how the bugs have gotten many survivalists to tap from the challenge, and I just wanted to say shout out to Andrew Shade, who was seen during this episode during his first challenge where he had a spider bite and some ticks, and it was very sad that he had to leave the challenge due to that. And we also see Kate talking about the bugs, and we also see Jamie from XL8 after getting bit by so many bugs, and he eventually had to leave that challenge just due to the pain. And Ernie and Amanda want a break from the bugs. That night, the bugs are biting, and the two are at their wits' end and can't get any sleep. Day 11, and they are both very tired and had an almost sleepless night. Ernie is taking a nap, and Amanda says that he shuts down when he's tired. It is mentioned that it is windy and cold. Amanda goes to check the fishing lines by herself and finds 2 catfishes, and she brings them back after processing them in the 2 feast. Her PSR goes from 6.0 to 6.3. Later, it gets super windy and cold. There's a very common theme about it getting windy and cold, and I just feel it needs to be mentioned. That night, there are high winds and the temp drops to 40 degrees, and, there's one point where the wind chill makes it 38, 39 degrees, and that's crazy. And later that night, the winds cause the fire to flare up, and Ernie is burned by the fire, and the fire gets out of control, and the two have to put it out, and luckily they get it under control. Day 12, and it has been rough for these two with the bugs and the cold. Ernie says he would be gone if it wasn't for Amanda, which I thought was a very oh no moment. And the two want to build a wind wall. Ernie's PSR drops from 6.2 to 6.0. The two work on adding more walls to protect from the winds, and that night, the wind is blowing, but luckily their shelter is doing a good job of keeping the wind out and the heat in. Day 13, and Ernie got some sleep and is in a better mood. Amanda finds a grub that they can use as bait, and she uses it to bait the lines. Day 14, and the two talk about how during their last challenge they were leaving at this point, but they still have a week left. They then go to check their lines, but there are no fish. That night, they hear animals near their shelter, and day 15, Ernie spots a paw print in the sand, which worries them both. Ernie gives a pep talk to help ease Amanda's worries because she's very worried about all the animals that are nearby. Night 15, and the two have 2 separate fires in their boma, where Ernie is in the interior shelter, and Amanda is outside the interior shelter, but is still surrounded by the boma. And day 16, Amanda is struggling, and the two check on their fishing lines. There is no fish, and Amanda is tired. Day 17 and 18, we see Amanda as she's struggling to do the daily task, and she talks about how tired and weak she is, and she needs to take longer breaks. Ernie mentions how they need food. Day 19, the two go out to check their fishing lines, and luckily there are fish for them. Hooray! Amanda's PSR goes from 6.3 to 6.6, while Ernie's PSR goes from 6.0 to 6.3. And then I just wanted to say that during the episode, I noticed that they placed their passive lines closer to the island they were on, because at first they had to canoe out to get to the spots where they left the fishing lines, but then after a little bit they seemed to be closer to the edge of the lake, probably because they didn't want to expend a lot of energy paddling out to look for it, or with the rising water levels there was more activity near camp. But I just wanted to point that out. And day 20, Amanda spots some elephants, and Ernie mentions how there are elephants near their camp. And then we see that during the survival kit segment, we see Ernie and Amanda playing a game where they ask questions on, like, who's the most likely to do this, or who is the most likely to do that, or who likes Taco Bell, or who's likely to cry or get emotional or something. And they have a stick for Amanda and a piece of bark for Ernie. And that was very interesting. And night 20, and there are elephants near their camp. Dun dun dun. Day 21, and it is extraction day. And they repeat the line that Ernie said during the day of extraction on their fan challenge, which was like, I am so excited, and this is gonna suck so bad, or something like that. And I thought that was a nice little throwback. And then we hear a lot of Amanda commentary during extraction. They check the map and need to canoe to another island for extraction, and they need to go 7 miles, and they do the 7 miles, and it takes 6 hours because they have to pull their canoe over land, and it's very difficult. And Ernie is pulling emotionally and physically a lot, and Amanda's trying to make it through, but she's exhausted from this challenge. And this seems to be one of the toughest extractions we've seen, or at least we see a lot of it, and there's a lot going on where they have to pull the canoe over land, or they have to do this, and it just looks like a lot of work and effort. So kudos to both of them for doing that. And after all the trekking and paddling and pulling and walking, they successfully complete their 21-day challenge. Hooray! I'm so excited for them both. And Amanda lost 33 pounds, and her PSR goes from 5.7 to 7.4. Ernie lost 22 pounds, and his PSR goes from 6.0 to 7.2. All in all, a really good episode in my opinion. I think it's well received from the fans from what I've seen on the pages, 5 minutes after the episode aired. But Ernie and Amanda, great dynamics, great episode. A lot happened. It was really great. And I hope we can see them both in the future at some point. Please bring them back. It would be great. And thank you all so much for listening. And next episode is Everglades Thirst Trap. Two survivalists fight to endure 21 days of extreme dehydration in the drought-stricken Everglades. With no potable water available, the pair is threatened with an early tap out. Now, I would love to give a little bit of a spoiler for this episode, but I won't. And, we may be seeing some familiar face or faces, but I won't tell. Anyway, thank you all so much for listening. Please like, comment nice things, and subscribe. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you. Bye-bye.